So Mike Johnson comes out with just a major push that 26 midterms has got to be a Republican thing so he can get his agenda passed. He can get the Trump agenda passed. I have a big problem with that because, to be honest with you, they've had a year to get the Trump agenda passed and have not done that. So we're going to discuss what Mike Johnson is saying, how he's trying to throw noodles on the wall to get them to all stick to make you just so excited about the Republicans. And yes, I'm a conservative. Yes, I want the Republicans to win the midterms. But to be honest with you, why are we so anxious when we have not done anything this whole year? Even down to, wait till you hear the numbers, what Eric Holder, what Merrick Garland, some of them that did the DOJ that I could not stand, the amount of arrests that they had versus what Pam Bondi has done. We're going to discuss what the DOJ has not done versus what some of its predecessors has done. And again, we hear Mike Johnson and Pam Bondi saying how we have to win the midterms, how we have to have all this focus on Trump's agenda, yet they've done nothing. We'll discuss that. Also, we're going to talk about this directional wave electromagnetic cognitive weapon. We talked about this a little yesterday. There was a video that Peter Doocy shared about him actually doing this back in 2013, he said, and now you're starting to see it get even more, used by military. He stood in front of it and he said it felt unbelievable. We're going to discuss that a little bit more because that's that direct energy weaponry that we've talked about for so long and how dangerous it really could be and how they could use it so far away from you and pinpoint and actually shut down your body. It's unbelievable. Wait till you hear this story. And then also we're going to hear from Alex Jones. He's pushing a few things. He's pushing for nationalization of getting rid of the Fed for Trump, and he has reasons. The Fed came out this week and stated how they have too much pressure on them from the Trump administration. Well, to be honest with you, who owns the Fed? The biggest banks and the Rothschilds. So Trump pushing against them should be something that we want, and we should want to get rid of the Fed because the Fed has caused the problems with money printing, with taxation, with the control of our dollar for so long, and I think we need to get rid of it. Also, Alex Jones brings up the fact of, we're seeing the Podesta plan, a true Second World War, a second civil war or civil unrest happening. We saw it last night with journalists getting attacked, with their lives being threatened. We saw this with the situation that happened in Jackson, my capital. What happened while we were there in the hospital, there was something that took place, a massive casualty event that took place at a religious place. See, chaos brings in exactly what left wants. We'll discuss that and how Trump has got to be on top of it. From Alex Jones' warning to Mike Johnson, thriving for Republicans to win. Sadly, we need Republicans to actually do their job and keep us safe. Let's dive into all these stories today. This video starts right now. Guys, welcome to our channel. Thank you so very much for being here. We're humbled by your support. Again, we're thankful to be home. We did get out of the hospital yesterday, last night. So we got in. You see, we're very tired. My wife, we have school supposedly today for homeschooling, but we're going to push that to Saturday so our kids can try to sleep through the night. Jennings was up throughout the night. We were having to check his levels and all that kind of stuff. And so thank you for your prayers. We covered them, and we are following that journey. You can follow on Life with Colby Mack. We have the first video coming out in the series dealing with Jennings, and you'll kind of see more of an emotional version of it, what goes on, because it was the way to get to the hospital, and then you'll see the steps that we've taken, and then we're going to talk about on that channel again the dangers of all the things going on with meds and how I believe that God can heal us, and I believe that God gives us foods and herbs and things like that that can actually do more than we give God credit for, sadly. And we always rely on pharma. But anyways, that's for that other channel. I just want you to be aware of Jennings' journey and things going on in our life. Go check that out, Life of Colby Mack. We have a video coming out today. Now, let's jump to the stories of the day because that's why you're here. First, let's talk about the situation with the Fed and also what Alex Jones was saying, and then that's going to move us right into the political side of the argument with Mike Johnson and the DOJ. First, let's hear from Fed. It says, the video message from the Federal Reserve shows that Jerome Powell is feeling pressure and seems like he is getting illegally pressured by the Trump administration. And he says he's not going to kowtow. Basically, he's acting like Trump is bullying him. Well, to be honest with you, Trump may be bullying him. Now let's go to who is the Fed. The Fed is the biggest banks in America, the biggest players in America when it comes to our money. The Fed is also there to basically rip us off with money and taxation, print money that we don't have, and then buy the debts back like it matters. It's a modern monetary theory, and the Fed has had a big part of that. The banking sector has had a big part of that. To me, hurting our dollar and printing more dollars and having fractional reserve lending is actually hurting the Main Street American more than any other policy in our government other than the Senate and Congress spending more money. But Jerome Powell feels pressure. Now, I love what Alex Jones says here. He says, I believe that we should nationalize the Fed, meaning bring it into the equation where we don't allow it to be a standalone body to do what it wants to do and basically set policy for the whole United States. When the United States, like for instance right now, the methods of them lowering the interest rate, everything is firing on all cylinders to show that that should happen. However, they're choosing not to do it because they don't like Trump. Simple as that. Now, you may not like him, but ultimately they should not have a biases in their position. Well, they do. And so basically they're trying to be resilient, but at the same time they're actually trying to be a push off of Trump. They're trying to say, you know what, forget you, we're the bosses of the money. And I don't believe that's right. Alex Jones said, you know, what we don't realize is the Federal Reserve, being that they're setting policy, 80% of this is owned by private banking, especially the Rothschild family. It says the other is owned by parts of banking that has too much power in our lives. The same ones that the government bailed out years ago has got major ties to the Fed. Now, let's go back to where the Fed came from. The Fed came from basically Jekyll Island, came from the World War I era, and basically has set policy for taxation, for modern monetary theory, for printing money, for interest rates. And could they be used for good? They could be. But I think like anything else, when men and power get involved, evil exists. And so therefore, I think we need a reset of the Fed. I think we need to get rid of the Fed personally. And I think we need to find a new way of looking at banking. Not in a political sense. I don't believe it should be the president electing these people every 4 years or every 8 years. But I do believe there needs to be some kind of body that is better than what we've got now in a full reset of what their goals and aspirations are. If the Fed or the Senate or the Congress or the president is not helping do good budgeting and getting on sound ground, I believe that everyone should be fired. I think that should be wrote into law. If we can't balance a budget, everyone should be fired and not be able to run again. I think that makes sense. That's incompetency. We would say the same thing about a boss, an employee, employer. If they cannot balance a budget or cannot run their company, they're inept and they should be fired. Why can we not do this with public servants? So that's what I think here. Even Trump tried to fire him, and they're saying he can't be fired because he's a standalone independent. And I'm thinking, well, if he can't be fired, then he has more power than the president when it comes to monetary policy for America. And that is the wrong approach. I think Alex Jones said it right, that we need to look at getting rid of the Fed completely. Now, something else I want to bring up when it comes to what Alex Jones said, because I think he made a very good point of what's going on. So we had last night, we had Nick Sorter and Kim Higby, both independent journalists, things that you would never hear about, things that you'd never see, like the situation with this ICE situation, because mainstream media hadn't shown it. They're working in cahoots with the establishment to keep that information away from us. But thankful we have things like Twitter, X, and then we have other social media platforms that are allowing for things to be seen. Here's the important part of that. Last night, you hear these people, and X showed that they're filming, and these people are literally tearing and destroying this vehicle now, of two independent journalists, have done nothing other than filming what's going on in Minnesota and other places. They had people, all these people around them were chanting that they were going to take their lives. Take their lives now. They're not, these are not just open conservatives. One is a MAGA supporter, one is an independent journalist to a point where they're more of a centrist. Now, they're not for socialism, so they tend to probably vote for, you know, Trump. But to be honest with you, both these guys were just showing the fraud and the dangers, and then it went right into the riots and protests, and these people were threatening their lives. I mean, busting their windows, spray painting their car. All right. Jackson had a mass casualty event. 6 people gone at a Israeli synagogue. Then we had situations like what's happening in the protests that you're seeing in Dallas, New York City. And it says basically their push is to destroy this movement, and they want for civil unrest. It has come out. Now listen, this is where we have to get into the law part. There was an exposure done, and Alex Jones has talked about this, but a lot of other conservatives have talked about this, and Elon Musk even, he reposted every bit of this saying the NGOs that are funding this, it's like $300 to $400 million. And they said for most of these protester heads and organizers, they're paid for to go to protest all over. They said that 100 different protests, they found some of the same people at all protests that had nothing in common with each other in what they were protesting. Shows that they were purchased, bought off protest. Now, the question is this. If we have companies along with the mainstream media and along with the Democrats and the establishment of Washington paying for and propagandizing this situation, how in the world are they not being arrested? How are we in the world allowing for this to actually bring in a civil unrest or a second civil war? Alex Jones warns about that. He said, you know, what we're seeing is we're going to see a second world war. Now, that's not because he's been so smart. It's because every conservative sees what's going on, and then no one's doing anything about it. Let's go straight to Pam Bondi right now in the DOJ, and then right to Mike Johnson. So we have two reports. It says, we need some justice very, very soon. This is from Wall Street Apes, the numbers. Number of Americans under Republicans, a number of arrests under Republicans, 0. Not for the Russia collusion, not for the J6, not for Mar-a-Lago, not for Biden, Odo Penn, Epstein, Doge, COVID, Benghazi, Ukraine, funding nationalized protests like we were just talking about, the 2020 election stuff, and then allowing for illegals to vote. Nothing has been done. No laws have been passed. No arrests have been done. Now, this same time, under the Biden administration, by a year, they said they had over 1,200 people arrested that had some kind of obligation or narrative towards conservatism or towards independence or towards Trump. 1,200 arrested by that time, including the President of the United States a little bit later, the former president, which was Trump at that time, were arrested. Houses were gone through, and yet Pam Bondi has done none of this. No arrests have been done. Now, there was a report that says Ilhan Omar has been tied to all this fraud. Tim Walz has been tied to all this fraud. They're actually saying Tim Walz may not run for governor, which he's not, but they said he may even step down. That's huge. So he knows the fraud is there. Ilhan Omar has gotten filthy rich the last 4 years off the same situation of fraud. A lot of people have touched this hundreds of billions of dollars worth of waste, and yet nothing has been done. Did you know that Mike Johnson hasn't even censured? The House Republicans has not even went after Ilhan Omar, and when they tried to, people like Thomas Massie and some of the others, not only on the left, but some on the right, said, no, you can't do that. What? So she is breaking the law. We know it. It's fraud, and we're allowing it to take place. So when you hear people like the DOJ and Pam Bondi and Mike Johnson, John Thune says they're going to work for Trump and the Trump agenda, I'm struggling finding them working for the Trump agenda. Listen to what Mike Johnson just said, because it actually chaps me. Because what has he actually done? And they've been the most unsuccessful Congress on either side of the aisle, they said, for over at least 50 years. Listen to this. 2020, this is a direct quote from Mike Johnson. And to me, this is the kind of stuff that it enrages me. Listen. 2026 is here and everything is on the line. It's on the line. What's been on the line for 2025, Mike? Where you been? House Republicans have codified President Trump's EO, ended the border crisis, passed tax cuts for the working family, lowered costs, and unleashed energy dominance. But we have more to do. Now, he's saying all those points because they just codified some, just like last week. And he's saying all this stuff. Some of this stuff is using wording to make it look like they've done a ton. They've done jack diddly squat. Most of that's tied in one bill, the big bill that Trump did. Now, I didn't even like a lot of that bill because it did have some spending in it that shouldn't. But yeah, the lower the cost, that's all great. The energy sector, great. The fact that we're going into Venezuela, great. But a lot of that stuff had nothing to do with Congress. Had nothing to do with Mike Johnson and Republicans. So what they should be doing is working for the Trump agenda, censoring people that should not be in Congress that have come here probably illegally, if you go back into Ilhan Omar's history, saw the fraud, and yet nothing has been done. You remember people like Steve Bannon and Roger, I can't think of his name, basically Trump supporters. If they didn't go in front of Congress, the Democrat Congress, they held them in contempt, they got put in jail. If you remember James Comer and Jim Jordan, this is why I don't like these guys. They act like they're conservatives, but they're just pushovers. Remember them subpoenaing Bill and Hillary and how they were going to get them in front of the people, grandstand and teach them a lesson. Hillary got sick and Bill couldn't come. And have you heard anything else about that? I mean, there's no contempt of Congress. There's no arresting, is it? See, Republicans are inept. They really are. As a conservative saying that I've voted Republican my whole life, they're inept. They don't like winning. They actually suck at winning. So when we see stuff like Mike Johnson begging for people to vote that our last chance is 2026, we've got to get the midterms. Where you been, Mike? You know what? If Mike Johnson actually would have done his job and John Thune would have done their job, midterms would have been a shoo-in. We'd have passed it because gas prices are lower. They said egg prices are lower. They said things are happening. We're seeing great things with American prosperity. But because Congress has been so weak, we have to try to justify what they've done. Because DOJ hasn't arrested anybody, we have to try to justify what they have done. I like Dan Bongino, but to be honest with you, he's coming out trying to get all over all these people that's going against Trump. But it's like, dude, y'all didn't really do much. Now, you may have done some stuff on the lower cases, but we needed the high-profile arrests. We need the political arrests because that is what the Biden and Obama administrations did. And why in the world the Trump administration has all these people in charge and still nothing's getting done? What Trump should do is put pressure on Thune and Johnson and be so loud, just like he was with calling out the names of those senators last week. He needs to be so loud that if they choose not to do their job, then they get kicked out and find better people in leadership. I don't know why in the world he has Pam Bondi still in charge. I don't know why in the world that Trey Gowdy's name has been thrown up there. Honestly, the DOJ should be led by someone like Stephen Miller and someone that's just a staunch supporter of Trump. But not only that, someone who's willing to go against the fray. And Pam Bondi has not been that person. No arrests have been made. Nothing's been done. The fraud is still happening. So therefore, we're trying to justify winning the 2026 election midterms. If we don't do anything, we're going to lose it, and then Trump will be impeached, and then we will have nothing accomplished. And that means we will look back in history one day and say this was the biggest loss of a chance right now that Republicans fumbled the ball. Now, this is a Peter Doocy. I want you to watch this video. This is off my phone, so sorry the quality, but I want you to watch this because I found it real quick before I could get it edited. So I want you to just listen. It's about 20 or 30 seconds. Peter Doocy back in 2013 goes to Quantico, goes to the CIA headquarters and Army headquarters, another big intelligence spot in Virginia. But he gets hit with this solar energy electromagnetic cognitive device that they've been talking about. Now, this was back 13 years ago now. I want you to kind of listen to what he says and go from there.
The military says the active denial system is not radioactive, it's not a microwave, and it's not a laser beam. It's instead a man-sized beam of millimeter waves that can be fired from up to 1,000 meters away that are designed to get the subject, whoever's standing on this X, really, really hot so that they move. And it's about 50 degrees out here right now, but I just felt like it was about 1,000, and I've never been inside a tub that somebody dropped a hairdryer in, but I would imagine that that's what it feels like.
Did you hear that? 1,000 meters. So those direct energy weaponry, that's actually something that's been happening. But you think 13 years ago, and if you remember us talking about the Venezuela situation the last 2 days, or last 3 days actually, they were talking about how the Venezuela military, the people that were kind of whistleblowing and kind of telling the story, were like, we have never seen anything like this before. There's no way anyone can ever stand up to the American military based on what they did to us. And this weird feeling, this sound wave tape, I mean, they couldn't even explain it. And then we start finding these old videos, and it's like, wow. Here's the thing to think about. This is to me, a bittersweet thing. The fact that we have technology to take care and to protect us is phenomenal. I love that because it keeps maybe us safe and allows us to do the things like we just did. The scary part of that is just what we were talking about with conservatives leading and Republicans leading. If someone comes in charge, that for instance like Minnesota and New York, we're allowing these protests to happen, allowing for the police to stand down, what if all of a sudden we have leadership that targets conservatives and Christians? I did a short yesterday on Zimmerman Donnie and how his administration is targeting white conservatives, white Christians. Okay, so if we have situations like J6 again where that conservatives are targeted in some way, if we have situations where conservatives are not able to protest and they're able to use this versus their quote-unquote protest, unlike the right using it on the left, what's to say that this kind of stuff can't be used on us? This is where I'm very careful and conscientious of why we have to have good, proven, conservative leaders that want traditional values, that want freedom. And if we tend to, I love this quote. I want you to listen to this quote because it speaks volumes. This was something I shared on my Facebook account, but it speaks just so much. This is from Ben Franklin, from when he was a founding father and helped on the Constitution. It says, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become more corrupt and vicious, and leaders become vicious, people tend to be dependent and they need more masters. That speaks so good. I actually said this, and I want you to listen to this from my post. It says, this is why we will sadly end up with being more like a socialist nation or a controlled people. The people and the more that we have hardships, the more that government needs to step in and help us, like we're seeing with the socialist movement in these liberal areas. The more that we don't have police that's standing up for us, but that's standing against us. The more that we're not learning from history and we're allowing for fathers to be gone, from faith to be not utilized, and for us to not actually have a society that sees moral compasses and wants traditional values. The more we will see breakdown, and the more we will have masters. When we talk about direct energy weapons, and we talk about socialism, and we talk about the dangers of Democrats' rule, when you hear all that, and you hear about the bureaucracy and the dangers of our money, and talking about the Fed, and here, second Civil War maybe, all this stuff kind of goes back to one thing. Unrest causes chaos. Chaos causes for more government intervention. More government intervention is going to target anyone who is seeking freedom, hope, conservatism, and Christianity. My wife, I said this to my wife yesterday, I said, I believe that every med, like we were dealing with this diabetes diagnosis that we'll talk about on the other channel with Jennings, I said, I believe that everybody should have access to that and be able to get it quickly. And even her, I kind of chided her a little bit after. She said, yeah, but what if, she said, it should be easily accessible, but she said there's some people that won't know what to do with it and they'll abuse it and then put themselves in some kind of failure or, to a point where they bottom their sugar out and could be in a coma or pass away. And I said, yeah, but here's the thing. If we're wanting someone else to be responsible for us, that's where we get, people to hold back things that we need. If we think that everybody has to be responsible because bad players, what about that means the right to bear arms would be gone because people do bad things and then we expect, we need more laws for that. Same way with pharmaceuticals or whatever it is that you're talking about. The more that we say we don't want responsibility, we want the government or some big player to have it, like our money, like our medicine, like our Second Amendment rights, like our food system, like everything. When we allow the government to be over that, that gives them the power to control it. And if they can use every force necessary to keep that control, they're going to. Look at what's happening in Iran. Look what happened in Venezuela the last 50 years. Look what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. Look what's happening across the world. When we allow for people to lose responsibility and lack of care, then we allow for government to step in. We allow for bad players to step in, and evil will reign. That's what the civil unrest is becoming. Evil. And yet no one's doing anything about it. Yet no arrests have been done. Yet we have police chiefs telling their police to stand down in Minnesota. That should be illegal, and they should be reprimanded for it or fired or also thrown in jail. Guys, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts on today's video. Our goal is to talk about truths and talk about common sense and wisdom so we can be knowledgeable and more wise to raise our families in a way that's representative of morals, values, conservatism, and Christianity, of course. Guys, thank you for watching. God bless.